Well, congratulations. I saw this at Fantastic Fest when it played at Fantastic Fest. I got to talk to Malcolm McDowell, like a dream come true. So cool. And now it's finally like coming to the world. How does this feel that now like more and more people are going to be able to experience the ultimate cut of Caligula?
Um, no one's asked me that, so I yeah, I don't have an answer ready for that one. Honestly, it feels like one of those experiences that you're kind of observing while you're going through it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, because I started the work in 2019,
Okay.
and
Jeez.
so it's been so long that I've been uh living with this story and with this footage, and I obviously watched it grow and build and become the film, and so it's interesting to me. The thing that was really, really wonderful wonderful about Fantastic Fest and Beyond Fest is that I got to watch people watching it. And so getting invited to Cannes was like the first, because I really like the movie.
Yeah.
And, it's like, but it's kind of like everyone thinks their baby is cute, and so I when I got invited to Canada, I was like, okay, so maybe this is as good as I think it is. And then, especially Beyond Fest, because it was a packed house and it's a big,
Yeah.
and people went crazy. And felt, uh, it's like this thing that you've spent so much time on. And I mean, it's kind of a cliche. Everyone says it, you spend so much time alone with it, the other people getting to experience it is an exciting thing. And I think that the single biggest thing really for me is that I came into this such a big fan of Malcolm McDowell.
Okay.
And he'd been saying, I'd never seen Caligula before I
Okay.
got
So
the
you had never, okay, cool. I was
never seen
curious.
it. Because I was such a fan of him, and he had always said, the movie's terrible, don't watch it. But
Yeah.
I knew the legend. I knew the idea that the movie'd been stolen from the creative people, turned into this thing it was never supposed to be. And so the real joy for me in the idea that it's, this weekend in the UK and then the US next week is just that Malcolm is going to be so completely vindicated because his performance is so good. Someone from the Telegraph said this to me. He said when he watched the new version, it made sense to him in the arc of If, A Clockwork Orange, Oh Lucky Man. He said it makes sense that Caligula would be in
Yeah.
that arc, whereas the 1980 version, you don't get that. And that was the thing that I hope people experience. That's why I want as many people to see this as possible. Is even if the movie isn't for you or you think it's weird or whatever, it's a collection of actors and really especially Malcolm and Helen um at they're both powerhouses. They're both undeniably magnificent.
Well, and I mean, getting to work on this and show Malcolm McDowell must have been such an honor because I mean, I had the honor of speaking with him at Fantastic Fest and just hearing him talk about how he's floored about this. Like, that must just be so incredible for you as a filmmaker, as a person, just to be able to make something that he's proud of. Like, I would just be like, all right, cool. I don't have to do anything else ever again.
I well, I there was a moment where I was sitting working on the movie, and I mean, and this is like stalker level when you're working on a film like this. Like literally, I would get out of bed and then walk over to the computer and sit down and look at pictures of Malcolm and Helen all day long. And so it got to the point where I was laughing at myself, like, this is a little stalkery. My relationship with them over years was so
Yeah.
But so there was one moment that I remember really clearly, and I just remember thinking, knowing that anything associated with Caligula had been such a deep, deep pain point for Malcolm. It
Yeah.
was such a betrayal. He compared it. He said, "This is what it must feel like to be raped." Like he used such strong language.
Oh, interesting.
And I was looking at him on the screen, and I was doing my work for the day, and I thought, I now am in the chapter of his brain that is the Caligula part. And I thought, I will never meet this man. Not only will I not meet him, but he will actively put me into the camp of the people that he actively dislikes.
Yeah.
And I remember in that moment thinking, as a fan, how am I with that? And so it was it was kind of a little bit of a romantic moment there where I thought, I have to make the decision to sacrifice the idea of ever meeting this person in this world
Yeah.
for this guy on the screen, for Malcolm in 1976, who didn't have someone backing him up. And so I just remember making peace with that and just thinking, this guy is going to probably shit talk me in interviews. But it was for that guy. It was for the guy in
Yeah.
1976 that had no producers backing him up,
Yeah.
no, all of that. And so then I got a text from a mutual friend. It was Mark Critch from Son of a Critch, the TV show that Malcolm is on.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he said, Malcolm wants to talk to you. Is it okay if I give him your number? And I was like, is he going to yell at me? Like, I didn't know what was going to happen. And he called and he said, Tom, I am sorry that it took me this long to call you. I watched your version of the film and I just don't even know what to say. It's the movie I believed that I was making. And the short of it was he said, whatever you need, I'll be there. I'll be there for you. And, I
Oh,
really want people to see this. And so I said this to someone earlier today. It's like that thing that they say, don't meet your idols. But I can say if your idol is Malcolm McDowell, it's okay because now that I've been around him so much, he's a dad. Like I've seen him with his boys and he'll take the piss out of me the way he does them. And he's so fucking funny. And the heavies that he plays, like when you see him on, like at a convention, he's got the room rolling. He's just like that all the time.
he's
He's
so
super
funny. He's a
funny.
really nice guy. Like again, I only briefly spoke to him in Austin, but he was so funny. And then he was like quoting the movie and like all of a sudden went into Caligula mode for a second. And I was like, well, this is just the coolest. Like, what an incredible guy who's been acting for so long in so many incredible roles.
I've
Like,
I've I've met so many celebrities that are really nice when there's a fan present.
uh-huh.
They step away and they're horrible. And Malcolm is the opposite. Like he's a very, very sincere and genuine human being. I've watched him enough, like around a number of people, and yeah, he's fantastic. And it is a great that means more to me than the Cannes Film Festival.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's amazing. So I'm pivoting a little bit to more technical question here, moving away from Malcolm though, but like in remaking this movie, what do you consider yourself? It's not really director, it's edit, what do you consider yourself in this movie, like as a filmmaker? Like what is the, I don't know if title is the right word, but like
The term that we
it's a
came up with is that it's a reconstruction.
reconstruction.
And
Yeah.
so the difference between the can print and the print that is in theaters now is that at the end, my credit is Reconstructionist.
Okay, cool. Ooh, what a cool title.
Yeah. And so the thing is that, it's kind of funny because I was very trying to push myself in the background on it. Like I'm kind of here as an arbitrator and I have to put my taste into this and do what I
Yeah.
would do with it. I can't be Gore. I can't be Tinto. We saw what
Yeah.
happened when I was in charge. That went badly. So But it's funny because Malcolm and his best friend is Mike Kaplan, who did the all of the media and the PR campaigns around
Yes. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
2001, Clockwork Orange, and he came up with Reconstructionist, and they've both kind of browbeat me into the idea that like, no, this is your movie. And I'm like, but it's not. I wasn't there. It wasn't. And Malcolm
Yeah.
said that, you know, this isn't what anyone would have done with it. And that because we're looking at it from this point in time and we were able to make it so much of 1980 instead of trying to make it 1950s, and the things that we chose to do in the narrative, like this is, I was aiming more for a Jodorowsky film. I wasn't trying to make a Tinto Brass film. Things
Okay.
like him ascending the marble steps at the end. Malcolm said, I was so disappointed they didn't use that shot. That was one of my favorite things I remembered doing on the set. Well, in Hermeticism, the ascension on the steps is part of the way, like that's an element of transcendence in the hero's
Yeah.
journey.
Yeah.
So that whole third act with the idea of the play where the blood breaks and the giant gets upset and Malcolm says, don't worry, it's only a show. Like it really became a fable about a character recognizing his transience and then becoming a legend. And so a lot of that isn't what Tinto or Gore intended, but like for me, I saw it in the footage and I was like, wait, I can move because, there are elements of classical literature that all of
Yes.
these things come from.
Oh
So
yeah.
yeah, I don't know. I got off on a tangent, but yes,
No,
it's
that's so cool though. I
so
mean that's
that's why
so cool to put your
we didn't know
taste
what to
into
call
it.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they basically I had to pretend I was the director, but I didn't feel that that was respectful to do. So that's why I was originally listed just as producer.
Okay.
And Mike and Malcolm both said, but that's not accurate. They're like, you didn't produce this movie, like you made this movie, you know, from these
So
scraps. So that's where Reconstructionist came from, was
okay.
trying to find some word that would at least pique people's curiosity.
Yeah, I was curious about that because it's like not directing, but also direct. It's such an interesting like situation that you found yourself in terms of reconstructing this movie. And my
I
God, is it not the most beautiful thing? Like, because I hadn't seen the original one. I've always heard of it, and like I'd seen clips, and I always like would giggle about it. But seeing it is just like this is a spectacle, but like in the most beautiful like way possible, like with the
it's
set
interesting.
pieces and everything.
It's interesting to put both of them on your computer screen and watch like part of one and then go to the other and
I can
just
only imagine.
it's I've actually really enjoyed doing that.
Oh.
It highlights what a train wreck the original was. So that has been an entertaining thing that I had done after we were finished.
So I am curious, what was the most exciting maybe scene for you to have put back into Caligula besides the step scene that you mentioned earlier? Was there a moment that you were especially excited to get people to finally see that had been lost for so long or left on the cutting room floor at the
Like
beginning?
there's two things I can think of. One is that there's a moment in the 1980 version where Caligula returns from kind of being in the underworld, the Orpheus in the underworld thing where he's in the sewers of the city, and he comes back
Yeah.
to the Senate and he gives his big speech and raises hell and cuts the cords and they drop the cloth onto the Senate. And in that, the camera starts to pan up to the right and then it just fades to the next scene. But what the camera did is it followed all the way up to Helen Mirren as Caesonia watching this happen. And what she does is she's laughing, but then she gets a really serious look on her face. like, wait, this isn't funny. This could be bad. And then she turns and looks at the camera. And in that moment, the part of me that is kind of a Grant Morrison fan, the part of me that gets into the fourth wall
Yeah.
kind of stuff, was thinking, okay, it's almost like they know their characters. So when Caligula at the end says, do you know the dance of death? And says, would you like to see my dance? Like and when Caligula is smashing the heads of the statues, screaming, you aren't real, the faces he's smashing are his face.
Yeah.
So it's the idea, he's not smashing the gods at that point. It's his ego, it's his identity. And so I really loved all of that kind of, metaphysical fourth wall stuff, that a lot of it was, I don't know how it all converged in the way that it did, but there was enough footage that we were able to build that. So that's one. But then from a narrative point of view, there's a scene with Malcolm and Helen where she basically calls him on his bullshit. She says to him,
Yeah.
why are you antagonizing them? And he said, because I hate them. And she says, but do you have to be so obvious? And in the 1980 film, we just think that he's crazy from the first shot of the movie to the end. And so narratively, that to me was such a big pivot point, because now we understand that he is a character with deep motivations that is trying to deconstruct the empire from the top down.
Oh, that's so cool. That is so cool to be able to create, like, make that arc so obvious and make it much more complex and much more
Yeah.
deep and interesting, and also
I mean,
capturing McDowell's performance in that too.
everyone says this, and this is also a cliche, but I really, really mean it. The movie gets better the third time you've seen it. And it's because it is a cyclical film. Everything that Tiberius warns him of in the beginning, that sounds like the
Yeah.
ramblings of a madman, come to pass. And at the
Yeah.
end, like the way that he's scared of the bird in the beginning, and at the end, Caesonia is scared and he's not, like, in the way that Tiberius wasn't afraid to die, like all of this. And that's the whole point with that Dave McKean opening of the funeral, the idea of
Yes.
lineage of power. Um, so it's kind of, it's Sandman-like in that way, that it is a cyclical story. And there are things that uh, it's all really clear and it's all there. But there's definitely things you'll catch on the second and third time that you didn't on the first. It really is
I'm
that rich of a story.
I'm so excited to see it a second time. I'm actually hosting a screening in DC of the movie, and
Oh, awesome.
I'm so stoked for people to see it on the big screen and for me to see it a second time, like on a big screen. I'm so excited.
It's it's funny because I really like seeing it on the big screen. And there's times when I'm thinking, can I watch this movie one fucking more time? Because I've seen it so, but then you find yourself in the theater. And for me, the big thing with the big screen is a lot, not one frame in this has been seen before. And the shots that are similar are just different takes that had a little different subtlety. But the big difference to me, um, aside from all the narrative, there's like an hour and a half that no one's seen. But
Yeah.
the big shots of the sets are so amazing.
Yes.
But I really love the close-ups.
Oh,
And that to me is where, when I'm seeing those on the big screen and the film grain and, you know,
but like being able to pay attention to the things going on in the background now. Like there's just so much
yes, that's a
happening
great point.
constantly, and being able to pay attention more to like what the extras are doing in the background, like what weird debauchery is going on every inch of the screen is so cool. And getting to see just
It's
the literal layers of the set are just so cool just to watch and to take
the,
in.
the one to pay the most attention to in that regard is, they called it in the script, the harem of monsters. When Tiberius is doing, where he's walking around the three-story elevator thing,
Yeah. Okay.
that scene alone, the number of prosthetics, like there's guys with carved faces and conjoined twins and hermaphrodites. So I've, in the behind the scenes photos and looking at the footage and things like that, it's like a horror film level of prosthetics. There's so much special effects, practical effects just in that scene that I wish we could have made that a half an hour, that sequence. There's so
That would
much that we couldn't show, and there's like a weird guy that's got like an eye in his forehead, and you just see him for a second, and there's a lot. You'll notice it now
oh,
that
I'm
I've
so
said it.
excited.
Like
That's so
people
cool.
like up on a human spider web. It's very it's very weird and very, very cool.